This time on Rad Video, we're talking about a bunch of things, including when Chris Haslam dropped all of his sponsors, what's going on with that, and also what skateboarding will look like in 20 years. Let's take a look. Welcome back to Rad Video channel, where you can learn new things about skateboarding. I talk about all different kinds of topics in the skateboarding world. I review skateboarding games. I talk about all kinds of stuff, including answering your questions here on Ask Rad. Start thinking up some questions for the end of the video. Tell you how to submit them. First one is from Jacob. He says, "Hey Rad, could you do a video on the physics of how much harder it is to learn tricks as a fatter/heavier skater? I'm currently 350 and I can do a couple flatland tricks, but I'd love to know really how much harder, if at all, it is for me." So this was a pretty interesting question for me because there's a lot of different things you could think about as far as like pumping in ramps or I don't know, stuff like that. But the easiest thing I could think of to calculate would be how much force you need to jump with compared to me, for example. So let's say you want to do a kickflip. And I was thinking you would probably want to jump about a foot in the air. So the board, is about however wide your board is, I don't know, but if it's at an angle a little bit, you need at least a foot. You can pull your feet up. You might not have the same flexibility, so you might want to be able to jump about a foot in the air to clear the board. And so I found a website where you can calculate how much force it takes to be able to jump up to dunk. And it was like, it factors in your knee angles and all this kind of stuff. This is more complicated than I wanted to get into, but it helps to just plug in the numbers and see comparison-wise. So for me to jump a foot would take 1,495 newtons, which is not going to mean much, only in comparison. At 350, it would be 3,271 newtons, which is a little over twice as much force. And I don't think that's twice as difficult. That's probably like 4 times as difficult because if I run that backwards, if you jumped 12 inches, I could use that same force and jump 26 inches. I could dunk pretty easily. The rim would be like right here on me if I jumped that high. I don't know if I can jump that high. Probably not. So if you have to put in that much force to jump a foot to do a kickflip or something like that, then that's a lot. That's really impressive. That's a ton of force that you can put out. So yeah, it is quite a bit harder, more than double in the numbers, more than that even if you factor in other things. So definitely stick in there. That's really impressive and cool that you're able to do that kind of stuff. If you can clear a foot and do a kickflip like that, if you do get the weight down, you'll be able to dunk, right? So that's pretty cool. Keep it up. All right, next question is from Ian. He had a couple of questions. Are you into the Japanese freestyle scene? Seems like it's really up and coming and popular with the youth over there. Definitely, I do think that stuff is really cool. I follow a lot of guys on Instagram that are into that scene over there. There's a lot of young freestylers coming up. There's a kid who does like different variations of 720 shove-its going full speed, which is really crazy. They have competitions over there. It seems like one of the more popular ways to skate over there, which is really cool. It's tough, though, to follow it because I don't speak Japanese. I can read a bare minimum of some stuff every now and then, pick out a word here and there, but I don't know anything. So it's kind of tough to actually follow along with who's who. Like even the names is tough to keep straight and all that. So one of the guys I follow is named Masahiro Fuji. And if you watch the channel for a long time, you might recognize him. He was in my Casper flip video because he was one of the contenders for doing it. I think he was doing it in like 89 or something. He was doing, or 90 maybe. He was doing all kinds of crazy flip tricks and stuff that no one else was doing. And he didn't really become that well known, even though he was doing this crazy stuff. And now I think it's his kid. There's a bunch of other kids. There's adults. There's people flying out there in the freestyle world to go to events and all that stuff. Really, really cool. Like I said, hard to keep straight what exactly is going on, but I love to watch that stuff. If you're into freestyle, at least follow him and figure out through tags who else to follow. But it's really cool stuff, and I'm excited to see where that ends up going. Second question was, what's your take on Chris Haslam and him dropping off his sponsors and now going it alone? So for those of you who haven't heard about what's going on with him, he dropped all of his sponsors and he started his own brand called Brainchild. So he was on the 9 Club, and I didn't watch that whole episode, but I saw a transcript of this part that he was talking about, where he said that after Almost, he couldn't find any board or shoe sponsors that would take him on. And I find that a little hard to imagine because it's Chris Haslam and he's amazing at skateboarding. You think everyone would want him, but maybe he just couldn't come to the right terms, or they couldn't agree on different things, or maybe he wanted some kind of leeway that they didn't want to give him. And so he started to do his own thing. And if you haven't seen the video part he put out, which it's not really a video part because it's not from a video, he just like put out a video by himself. It's amazing. It's completely incredible. So if he can keep doing that kind of stuff, because he started his own brand, like he had to do that to keep with his skating the way that it is, I'm all for it because I want to watch anything that guy does. Like there's a trick in that part where he does a nollie unpossible, I think it would be. So if you're not familiar, an unpossible is like if you start scooping a normal impossible, like it's going around backside, but right after it starts you switch to your front foot and pull it around like that. That's called an unpossible. Front foot impossible would spin like front side. This is backside, and you're sort of putting your front foot on the back of the board and pulling it around that way. Really cool trick. He does one nollie in transition. Like if the only way he could keep doing this type of stuff he does and the way he does it at the pace he wants to do it is for him to have his own brand, then I wish it the best, and I hope he makes tons of money so he can keep doing that. And it kind of made me think, I was talking to a friend, he hasn't been really actively in skateboarding for a long time. He was asking like some of his favorite skaters. Like he really liked a Day One song. He was asking what he's been up to, what kind of stuff he's been releasing and everything. And I was telling him, like, if you follow him on Instagram, you'll see him stacking up multiple boards, doing a trick off of one and landing, or like, you know, doing a blunt stall and popping his wheels off and switching them and all that kind of stuff. And my friend was like, what? Like, why is he doing that? That's stupid. Why isn't he out filming like serious street video parts anymore? And I was like, man, it's a lot of fun to watch. It's really cool. No one else is doing that kind of stuff, and he's amazingly talented. But isn't he living the dream? If you could go in the backyard with your buddies and just like spend an hour figuring out some weird new thing and doing it, post on Instagram, and then like that's what you do, that's awesome. So anything it takes for Chris Haslam to just do what he's doing and keeping it up, I am all for. So I don't have any special insider information about what's going on, but I am definitely in support of it. Okay. Last question is from Axel, who says, "Hey Rad Rat, I was wondering what you think skateboarding will look like in 20 years or just the future in general." There were a couple of things that I thought of. First was that the newest batch of skaters won't always be better than the old ones, which is kind of how it is now. Like the best skater from 1993, there's a guy out there who can do everything switch. That guy could do it, right? Because skateboarding's getting so much better and better and better. I think in 20 years we'll get to that point where there's no easy headroom for getting better anymore. There'll be like the super tech guy who came out in 2030 who is the techest skater who ever existed, and no one will be able to do better. There'll be the guy who did the biggest gaps ever, and it will never be topped. I think we'll be starting to get to that point where there's no more way to advance. There's still style, there's still new tricks, there's still different, you know, the way you put together lines, there's all that kind of stuff, but as far as like the human limits of skateboarding, I think we'll be starting to get to those. Within practical considerations. I'm not talking about in my physics series where I talk about the biggest thing that could ever be done, because there's huge risk of death in all of those, but just like what they could realistically do. We'll be at a point where you can't get that much better. But what that will mean is like in professional sports, like, you know, football and baseball. I couldn't even think of a sport for a minute, not into any of those, but how you can have trainers that are helping you with very specific things. You know exactly how strong you should be, you know exactly like what your body should be like for this sport. You know that you should be like not super huge because that'll slow you down, but like pretty big, and you know exactly how to train these certain muscles that you'll need, and you have trainers and all that, certain nutritional plan to make sure you're getting everything exactly the way you're supposed to. I think skateboarding could get to that point, because if we're starting to reach those limits, the only way to get better than the last guy is to be more capable, is to do all that extra training and everything. And so I think that might be what happens in about 20 years. One of the other things, I think skateboarding will have a lot more female skaters for sure. It seems like everything's getting less gendered, and I can imagine in 20 years that might be like 2 generations of female skaters that are just grew up with it like the guys did. I think right now there's still maybe not a stigma, but it's sort of a little less accepted for a girl to get into skateboarding. And with it being in the, the Olympics coming up, it would be a little more likely that regular people could get into skateboarding. So like, male, female, whatever. But if it's just more mainstream in that way, then more people will be getting into it, taking their own different routes at it, doing their own thing. And so it'd be a little bigger. It'll be more inclusive. It won't be as much of a not underground. Skateboarding hasn't been underground for a long time, but it won't be more of a rebellious type of thing like it is now. Not saying that's necessarily a good or bad thing, but I do think that's probably the route it's going to take. So that's my thoughts on that. I guess we'll see. You can always come back to this video in 20 years because nothing ever disappears from the internet, and you can send it to me later and tell me how wrong I was. But I'd like to see your thoughts on that below in the comments. What could change in skateboarding in 20 years? It's hard to imagine. In 1999, things were a lot different, and there's no way they could have guessed that it would turn into what it did now because of technology and because of all that kind of stuff, how big skateboarding is and how many people are doing it. There's no way they would have been able to guess. So I can't really guess either, but that is my thoughts. So let me know yours below. And also go to radratvideo.com, submit your question for the next batch of videos. There's a form right there on the homepage. And until next time, make sure you tap my logo on screen to subscribe, and then you can stay updated when the new ones come out. And there's a few videos to watch in the meantime as well. Thanks for watching.